NC State family, it's time for an honest look at your sports world. Let's get you hooked up for Pack Therapy, presented by First Horizon Bank. Here are your hosts, Tim Donnelly and Wolfpack football legend Mike Glennon.
Welcome into another edition of Pack Therapy, the podcast. Tim Donnelly here with my co-host, former Pack quarterback, former Pack legend, I should say. I got to make sure I get that right. Not former Pack legend. We'll start there. Rough start. Anybody know what that's like? I'm Tim Donnelly, Mike Glennon here. It's Pack Therapy. Subscribe, watch on YouTube, comment questions. Mike, let's start with positive. CJ Bailey is good. I mean, am I missing something, or is he's just a really good freshman quarterback?
I think he's got a really good skill set. You see the arm, you see the legs. Is he missing some throws? Yes. Is he missing some reads? Yes. He's a true freshman. I would think if we look at Nebraska and Raleigh, I bet he's missing reads and missing some throws too. That's just going to be part of it. But I think, if this was 5 years ago, we would say NC State's got their guy of the future. Now we say, hopefully NC State's got their guy of the future. But I've been very impressed with CJ. It's not only a skill set, it's kind of the energy he plays with. I often think, you watch football all the time, you watch college, you watch NFL, and sometimes you wonder, how much fun are they actually having? Is the quarterback having fun? It always looks so serious. You watch CJ Bailey, he looks like he's having fun out there, which is just refreshing to see, and he looks like a great leader. So I've been very impressed with CJ. Again, not the reason why NC State lost.
Sometimes I wish we disagreed more on this podcast, but you went right to the exact place I wanted to go, which is were you at the game?
I was.
I watched on the broadcast, and they showed him right before he went out for the first series. He was on the bench and he yawned, and I went like, oh, either that's really not good or really good. And then I think it was really good. And then on that first drive, he threw a pass over the middle. I forget exactly what happened, but the ball ended up being kicked back to him, and he fielded it like a baseball player and just kind of popped up. And I went, this dude is really comfortable out there. And to get to that point, just a few starts into his career, it's really hard to find somebody, and I think he might be this guy who cares really, really hard, works really, really hard, and then also can be in a game not super tense and serious like you're saying. That's a really fine line there, and I think he kind of threads it.
Yeah, there is a balance between I care so much about this, yet I don't care at all.
Yeah.
And I think I didn't know he yawned before the game, but yeah, that you could say this guy's not into it, or it's he's just so relaxed out there that he's not playing with any anxiety or stress. Just a really good player, and the future's bright. Now there were a few
Yep.
plays, throws, reads that I think he would like to have back, including the kind of sack, fumble, RPO. Got to get the ball out of your hands. The line's block. There's an unblocked defender. You got to get the ball out of your hands. Missed Casey on kind of a crossing route, but he threw. We're talking last night. We saw Aaron Rodgers throw an absolute dime against cover 2. CJ's wasn't quite that, but he threw that seam route against cover 2. So I believe it was Justin Donnelly. That was an unbelievable throw. So you see the talent and where this thing could be headed. Hopefully for a while here at NC State.
Dave Doran after the game pointed to the offense needing to protect the ball. You brought up some of it as well. I think you almost, if you're going to put a freshman quarterback out there, you're going to put him up against Syracuse's offense where Kyle McCord's going to throw for 340, and I know that because he's thrown for, at minimum, 339 yards in every game this year, and you don't really give the freshman a running game. I think you almost have to bake in, you have to work into the budget, 2, 3, 4 pretty big plays, because it's unfair not to. If your plan is to go into the game and say our freshman quarterback without much of a running game is going to play flawless football, that's not a good plan. You just can't expect it. It's unrealistic. I think what he did, baking in and budgeting in the big mistakes, it's kind of as well as you could hope from a player in that situation.
I thought the offense probably looked the best it did all year. Talked all season about getting the ball down the field and getting the ball in all the playmakers' hands and just kind of distributing it evenly at this point. Casey caught the deep ball. you see what Noah Rogers is capable. I mean, that touchdown, he's a great player and another young guy that you look forward to hopefully building around. But yeah, I don't think you can, tell CJ, go win us the game. We need help from around him, starting with the run game, help from the defense. But all in all, yeah, I think CJ Bailey's playing at a high level already as a freshman.
And to give credit to another playmaker that I mentioned, you had Hollywood Smothers, obviously showed his dynamic ability, but wasn't really true run game stuff for the running back. How do you handle the run game? From the quarterback's perspective, I'm sitting there going, guys, give me three tries at this. Give me first down, second down, and third down, because what we're doing is just setting me behind the sticks. The run game just isn't being effective.
It's hard to explain. I will admit that I understand the run game. I don't know it at quite the level as offensive linemen do and coaches. I understand the pass game much better, but I can't put my finger on why the running game is so ineffective. I mean, CJ Bailey was the leading rusher with 28 yards. Like that's inexcusable. I mean, Dave Doran after the game says we lost because we had 3 turnovers. Yes, that is true. But without a running game,
I think the turnovers are the symptom. The cause is the running game, because you are putting so much on CJ Bailey because you I was watching the Manning cast, the Monday night broadcast with Peyton and Eli a few weeks ago, and Peyton Manning was saying, all right, sometimes the quarterback needs a breather play. Peyton Manning, who's the most prepared person on the planet, is saying he called it a breather play where you can just turn and hand it off, and you almost get to no decision pre-snap, no decision post-snap. You get to turn your brain off for a second and just regroup. They aren't giving breather plays to a freshman quarterback because the running game can't get going. That's kind of what I'm getting at with, okay, you lost because of the turnovers, but the turnovers aren't exactly the root of the problem. They got to treat the cause, not the symptom. I think that the cause might be the running game isn't getting going, which leads to everything else.
They need to find a way. We're over halfway through the season, so you're starting to run out of time to get the running game going, but there's got to be a way, whether it's personnel, whether it's scheme. I liked what I saw from Hollywood Smothers. Raphael, I'm still encouraged by. He did have, we're talking about turnovers, the strip where he fumbled it. But I'm looking at the third down efficiency. NC State was 1 for 6, and that tells me that they're getting some first downs. They're turning the ball over, but you also got to get in more third and manageable situations, so you're not converting third and 10s where it's way more difficult. And then on Syracuse side, they went 8 for 15. I think that played a big part with Syracuse's ability to stay on the field and convert on third down.
The last year still to me is hanging over this team in that there was a point in time about right now when they stopped trying to run the ball with running backs. I mean, not completely, but it became the Brennan Armstrong and Casey Concepcion running show. CJ Bailey's got a little wiggle, he's not as powerful maybe between the tackles yet because he's still a young guy and has to hit the weight room as Brennan Armstrong, but it might be over the last part of this year the first. If number 1, number 2 in your rushing totals are the quarterback and Casey Concepcion, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I don't mind them mixing it up with CJ Bailey as a runner, but I just think he's a different style runner than what Brennan Armstrong was, and I actually think he's a better passer than what Brennan Armstrong was. So it's just different personnel wise. But yes, they did finally, last year around this time, they started getting Brennan involved in the run game. I just don't know if CJ's that guy because of his frame. He's more speed than he is power, where we saw what Brennan could do in the run game. I think that's what Anai did do a good job of last year, was getting Brennan and Casey involved in the run game, and it was very effective.
I called this on my afternoon show, the cold glass of water to the face. You're now, at this point, you have 3 wins as a team, underwhelming wins against group of 5 opponents, have not beaten a conference team, have not beaten a power conference team. Can you find 3 more wins on the schedule? If you're looking at it, I have the schedule here in front of me. At Cal, where you're a double-digit underdog, versus Stanford, I think that's going to be the must-have, gotta-have. Then Duke, Georgia Tech, and UNC. You have to win 3 of those games to become bowl eligible. And to me, bowl eligible is the avoiding absolute disaster. if you're playing the game where you bring the schedule up and you write W or L and 50-50 next to it, do you find 3?
I don't know. I see Stanford as a win. Like you said, traveling across the country to Cal, to a good Cal team, where double dog,
double-digit dog, 10.5.
10-point favorite or underdogs. I think they're better than Stanford. I'm not sure about Duke, Georgia Tech. I do think they're better than Carolina, but in that rivalry game, you never know. So,
I mean, the fact is, if you beat Stanford, you almost have to assume that, and you catch Cal, Duke, or Georgia Tech, one out of those 3. I think there's a pretty good chance UNC at the end is 2 5-win teams playing for a bowl. And if you heard some chants in the stadium for coaches, meaning not to be around anymore, I don't think it's necessarily possible with Dave Doran's contract situation, but you heard fans asking for it. It's that end of the season deal becomes wildly important.
Both maybe playing for bowl eligibility, just Mac Brown, who knows, that could be, the last hurrah for him. The expectations have gone from college football playoff to now just hoping for bowl eligibility is kind of sums up this first half of the season.
And I have to, I'll raise my hand on this. Maybe this show had something to do with raising those expectations. I was high on NC State. I really thought that the transfer class was something special. I assumed, based on the fact that they spent so much money in NIL and they so much resource to bring in these transfers, and they brought in wide receiver, running back, tight end, quarterback. I assumed that was them kind of through their actions saying, like, the offensive line is good. Because you had resources and you didn't spend them on the offensive line, except for Zeke in the middle, Corral. I don't know. I assume, like, they must be confident, and obviously I think that was a little bit of an overestimation.
To the people that, including myself, that had high expectations for this team, all the guys that they brought in, they've performed well. I mean, Justin Jolie's been a great addition. Noah Rogers has looked good. Wesley Grimes has looked good. Jordan Waters, but the offensive skill positions have done a good job. Defensively, the big question was, how do they replace Peyton Wilson? We didn't know the answer to that, and I think clearly we are seeing a defense where, to my eye, just no one stands out.
Yep.
When you watch the game, it doesn't look like anyone's dominating the game. You don't leave the game saying, wow, so-and-so on defense played really well. I've seen flashes of Davin Vann, but that's about the only name.
I was going to give you Vann, and a few times I think I may have forced it where I wanted to see someone like Cisse pop, and I'm like, oh, look at that. He's having a great – and you're right. It's me looking for it rather than it, like, popping out to me.
It's turned into kind of a bend-don't-break defense. I mean, Syracuse dominated the game. They punted one time, and it was right before halftime when they tried to kind of get into Hail Mary territory and then just ended up punting the ball away to get into half. That was it. And then Syracuse also went for it multiple times in the red zone rather than kicking the field goal. So the defense, I guess to their credit, they didn't let them score. 24 points isn't terrible, but Syracuse offense completely dominated them.
And if you go back 2 weeks ago, Wake Forest in the fourth ran all over the defense. Syracuse, 346 yards passing, throws all over the defense. You need something you can hang your hat on, right? You need something that you say, all right, they're not going to beat us this way. It kind of feels like a choose-your-own-adventure for the opposing team's offenses.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think Tony Gibson's trying to, he's not really playing a bend-don't-break defense with coverage. He's still pressuring and doing everything to try to create, some turnovers, which they did do against kind of those group of 5 schools. You go back to Louisiana Tech, and the turnovers were kind of the difference in that one. But just all in all, this defense, just like what you said, no one really pops.
You actually led right into what I want to be our first listener question. For those of you that listen to the podcast often, you already know it, but I'll give a reminder. Head to our YouTube page, 99.9 The Fan. Find the Pack Therapy playlist. You can go into the comments and ask questions just right under this video that you're listening to right now if you're on YouTube. Or you can go find it if you're listening on some other podcast software. If you leave a comment there, we'll do our best to answer as many as we can each episode, and we'll take a break. But when we come back, the first question is about exactly what Mike was just talking about, which is Tony Gibson's defense. Stick around. Welcome back into Pack Therapy, the podcast. As promised before the break, we're asking questions of Mike from listeners that we found in our YouTube comments. You can leave comments at any point in time during the Cal game, after the Cal game, leading up to next week's pod. The first one comes from Rob_L_99. Again, I teased that this was going to be about Tony Gibson's defense. What is the identity of the defense? I know what Tony Gibson does as a system, but shouldn't the system change if it isn't working? Try a 4-3 if the 3-3-5 isn't working. And then they throw in the parentheses, I don't know defenses, but I pick plays on video games. I do get that feeling when some people are just like, got to play the 4-4. It's like, that's the group of plays I pick from on College Football 25. Got to go with the 4-4.
So I think that's a great question. What is the identity? I don't know if I have the answer to it. It does feel like a bend, don't break, but heat them up at certain times to try to get after the quarterback. Personnel-wise, I don't know if there is an identity. It doesn't feel like the defenses we've seen in the past, and maybe Peyton Wilson deserves a lot of that credit. But I don't think it was just Peyton. You go back even further to Drake Thomas and all those linebackers that came through. Seemed like they played with a certain tenacity, and now just announced that Caden Fordham, I believe, is out for the year.
Yep.
Switching schemes in the middle of the season is tough to do. That is kind of reinventing the wheel with 5
Sometimes
games
it's tough to do over like multiple seasons to turn over a roster to fit in a way, because 3 down linemen versus 4 down linemen may not seem like a big deal, but you're asking guys to do extremely different jobs.
I don't think that's in the cards. It's just not realistic to make that drastic of a change. Now, could they sprinkle in some more 4 down fronts and things like that? Yeah, but who they are is who they are. So I don't see any major changes like that coming.
A lot of times, and I'm actually having this conversation like actively on my afternoon show about the Panthers. I think when you realize that you might be overmatched from a talent perspective, it's time to take more chances, because it's if you're gonna give up a touchdown over 9 plays, you might as well try to do something crazy. And if you give up a touchdown on 4 plays, it's like, all right, you're going to give it up on 5 or 7, whatever, later. I can't really give that advice to Tony Gibson, because he already throws a bunch of zero looks. He already blitzes the house. He already tries to disguise some things. So it's I think I gave maybe a little too much credit to Tony Gibson in the preseason, that he could make it work with any personnel, he'll figure it out. But I still like the way he calls a defense like in the game. It just looks like maybe they haven't built the roster out the way they need to.
I still like it too. I mean, he's sticking to who he is. The only thing is, sometimes I do wonder if what Wake Forest did is they prepared so much for the cover zero, and if they guess right, although Wake didn't execute it, which for Tony Gibson, that's just like a long foul ball. Okay, you had a guy wide open, you missed him. Doesn't matter to me. You are definitely playing with fire, and at times I felt like playing with fire a little too much. It just hasn't burned them quite yet, but the next one could be the one that finally gets you.
The long foul ball thing brought this back to me. We'll go to the next question from Packwagon 1981 in a second. There were some long foul balls for C.J. Bailey, guys downfield, that, again, I think it's time, because the ball jumps out of his hand. He's no disrespect, kind of lanky like you, so that long lever, the ball really, like, it spins really, really, really well out of his arm. There were a couple open guys downfield that he overthrew by like 2 or 3 yards, and I think he'll learn with time to just, you don't have to throw it 100 miles an hour. You can put some touch on it. You have a strong enough arm to let him run underneath it. Those long foul balls, Syracuse's defense had as many of those as we've seen.
Yeah, and he missed a few, but he also, I think, first possession hit Dakari Collins in stride, right on the money, and Dakari dropped it. So it works both ways. But
I just think he'll miss less of those in the future, because it's there is that part where you're like, oh my gosh, it's a college football deep ball and he's open.
Yeah, I'll throw it as far as I can. The one that I think he missed the most was KC. It was the 4 verticals, all go special. KC was coming across, and he kind of slipped, but the ball was behind him, and that was kind of a crucial play. Those deep balls, I mean, he did hit KC on one. The other one I loved, a Robert and I special, faked the bubble screen, hit the guy up the rail, and he kind of stopped the receiver before the corner could fall off of it. Again, that was more on the line. And I think, from my experience as well, touch kind of –
that's what I'm saying.
It comes as you play more. It's easy to kind of drive everything. It's the touch that takes a little bit more time.
Which goes back to what we said at the beginning of the show, right? He's yawning before the game, but you could also tell at times the adrenaline was up there, and he was throwing the fastball 40 yards when it could have been, a nice soft toss 50 yards and let his guy run
including
underneath
the
it.
interception. I would off the running back's hands. Now I would say it was probably more on the running back.
Hot and high,
it was
hot and high.
It was hot and high, and that's what the main thing was how hot it was. Like, you just kind of got to put a little touch, especially when you're throwing to running backs that are only 5 yards down the field. I mean, it was a tough ball to catch, but as a quarterback, I'm not going to put it all on him.
Of course not. That leads us to our next question. Again, like I said, Pack Wagon on YouTube. Rodgers, Concepcion, Smothers, Jolie, big plays, and we still lost. Who else can step up? Because it does, and I'll expand for Mr. Wagon here. It does feel like the first 4 or 5 weeks we were going, if only they got Rodgers going. If only Concepcion was getting something downfield. Jolie's doing good, but you need this guy. And then they all kind of made at least one big play during the game against Syracuse, 300-plus passing yards. Who else would be who else are we waiting for?
Look, I mean, it was a good game by the offense. We talked about Syracuse only punting once. I think State only punted once. It really was offensively. It was the lack of run game and it was the turnovers. The passing game was very efficient. So I don't think it's about someone else stepping up. Maybe, honestly, you could probably say the offensive line and running backs. Offensive line has done a good job in pass protection, but to get the run game going, I think that would really help. But this was the first game where we saw kind of everyone get involved and everyone hit those big plays, which was encouraging to see. Again, just running out of time now.
I just double-checked. You are correct. NC State punted just one time, which I did realize it about Syracuse. I didn't notice it in game with State, and it was like 2 minutes into the second quarter. So they essentially played 3 quarters of no punting, which the turnovers play into that as well. But that does mean the offense is at least moving and picking up first downs, which is a good thing. Next question here, David Jones, who is a frequent asker of questions. How do we match up with Cal looking at what they just did to Miami?
Hand up, I'll be honest. I haven't watched a lot of Cal. That Miami game was late. I didn't stay up for it. So I don't know. We'll see.
I'll give just like a quick 2 cents here. Cal is an interesting team. Coming into the year, if you were at ACC kickoff with all of the media from around all the ACC markets and all of the coaches and all, Jaden Ott was one of the most talked about players because of how good of a running back he was last year, and he has played almost not at all. Yet Cal has still played really, really well. I know their record might not show it, but they've been in just about every game, which is why they are a 10.5-point favorite over State. But how do you match up? I think even without Ott, I still think they're an offense built around running the ball. And if you're unable to do that, if you're unable to kind of put them behind, I think they're going to be really comfortable.
Yeah,
so.
And I think that's where the loss of Caden Fordham may show up. Against a team that can really run the football. He was kind of what I saw was the best kind of linebacker making plays. So losing him in the run game. They're going to need to step up because, to your point, a team that's comfortable running the ball, playing with a lead, makes it hard to come back on.
And then flip side, their defense is legit. I just brought up their stats. Against California Davis to open the season, they give up 13 points, but that's Cal Davis. Against Auburn, they gave up 14. That's pretty darn good. Against San Diego State, they gave up 10. Against Florida State, even though it was a loss, their defense gave up just 14 points. Against Miami did kind of run it up, but it was a 1-point game, a 1-point win. But Miami scored 39. Last week against Pitt, who had done some very, very good things this year, they gave up just 17. So in 5 of their 6 games, they gave up 17 points or less. That's going to be a task for the State offense to put up some points, get them behind, which is going to make their offense uncomfortable if it's going to be uncomfortable.
So that shows that it's going to be a tough task going out there. I will say traveling east to west is easier than west to east. I've played in a couple games where I was a West Coast team, play for the Raiders or Cardinals. You travel east, that time change, that 1 o'clock game is like 10 a.m. for you, where for NC State, this is really just a 3:30 kickoff. internal clock shouldn't really have to change.
I do want to spend a little bit of time on this. I got an email from a Cal fan, and I sent it to Mike, which is why he started laughing right away. I'm just going to read. This is a term paper, if you will. It comes from a Cal grad who lives in Cary now. Here's the I'm just going to read it till it's no longer funny. And trust me, I could read it for as long as I need to here. It says, "Dear Mr. Donnelly, appreciate the very proper introduction. I have listened to the State fans complain about how sporting life has been tough for them over the years, excluding this spring. You even host a show called Pack Therapy. Listening to this stuff is, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh yeah, cute. You guys have no idea how bad things can get. I went to Cal. In case you're not aware, let me introduce you to this house of horrors. Our main rival, other than Stanford, is FUCLA. They literally stole our colors, our mascot, and our fight song. Every time they scored in football, we had to hear it. We're probably the only school in the country that booed their own fight song. While Washington was beating us 18 straight games in football, FUCLA was beating us 18 straight games. FUCLA got themselves a sugar daddy in the 60s, and one of the results of that was they beat us 53 straight times in basketball. Yes, you heard that, 53 straight times. You think State has waited a long time for a championship in basketball? We haven't won the NCAA tournament since 1959. We haven't won our conference outright in football since 1958. We haven't won the Rose Bowl since 1938. In other words, before World War II. The 4 years that I attended Cal, we won 33% of our football games. My freshman year, our football coach, Joe Cap, pulled down his zipper during a press conference because he didn't like a question from a reporter. Yes, apparently he was going to have a mine is bigger than yours contest right there in the press room. A couple of players were accused of sexual assault, which there's some stuff we can't even say here. Sophomore year, our basketball team scored 8 points in the first half. I mean, I could go on and on. I guess going into the Cal week, it is just a good memory that it could be worse. Yeah. Good reminder that it could be worse.
It makes me think that maybe there is like a franchise for podcasts about their school's therapy just as needed.
Bear therapy. Do bears work in packs? It could be the same. I just want to read the last one, right? So the final word within the email was, so yeah, it's cute that State fans are griping about NC State stuff. I tell State fans every chance I get that they have no idea at all. P.S. Did I mention that they built Memorial Stadium on a major earthquake fault, the Hayward fault? Of course they did. It wouldn't surprise me if there was an earthquake during the game and swallowed up both teams. You think State is bad? Cal is the worst. But as always, go Bears. I think that's just a good reminder that
it could always be worse.
You could always be worse. It could always be worse. And maybe for Cal it is, even though they're a 10.5 point favorite this week. Mike, we appreciate you. To you, Mike the emailer, we appreciate you also. And stay strong out there, my man. We'll be back after the Cal game. Again, comment your questions for Mike. We'll see you next week. Have a good one.